Commander Tyke stepped out from his shuttle, the metal legs of his exoskeleton suit clanking against Earth's landing pad. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, adjusting to the intense sunlight that filtered through Earth's thin atmosphere. Even with his protective suit, he felt heavy, as if invisible hands were pushing down on his shoulders and chest. Gravity compensation at 87%, chirped the small computer on his wrist. Tyke grunted. For most species in the Galactic Confederation, Earth's gravity alone qualified it as uninhabitable. A small group of humans waited at the edge of the landing area. Tyke studied them with professional interest. They stood straight and tall without support suits, their soft bodies somehow maintaining form under crushing gravitational pressure. Their pink-brown skin looked fragile. No protective exoskeleton, no scales, just thin dermal layers that could tear against the simplest rock or plant. Commander Tyke called out a human in a dark blue uniform decorated with small metal symbols. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Brigadier General Kim, commander of the International Military Academy." Tyke moved forward carefully, each step calculated. His species, the Veltorians, were considered physically robust by galactic standards, yet here, he moved like an elder in final stages of life. "General Kim," he replied, extending his upper right limb in the human greeting ritual called a handshake. The human's grip was firm but careful. They had clearly been briefed on Veltorian physiology. "I trust your journey was comfortable?" asked Kim. "As comfortable as interstellar travel permits," Tyke replied diplomatically. The truth was that approaching Earth had been terrifying. The violent storms visible from orbit, the active volcanoes, the massive ocean systems, everything about this planet screamed danger to his instincts. General Kim smiled, showing white teeth, an expression Tyke knew meant friendliness in humans despite how predatory it appeared. "We have transport waiting to take you to the Academy. Our cadets are eager to meet the first Veltorian to visit our training facilities." They walked toward a large ground vehicle. 2 younger humans in similar uniforms stood at attention nearby. "These are Cadets Park and Lee," said Kim. "Top of their class. They'll be part of your escort during your stay." The cadets nodded respectfully. Tyke noticed they both carried small weapons at their sides. Standard protocol, he assumed, though he found it curious that such physically imposing creatures needed artificial weapons at all. As they drove through the mountain landscape, Tyke reviewed what he knew about humans. Their homeworld classification had shocked the scientific community. Class 12 Deathworlds were usually home only to primitive organisms, not sentient civilizations. Humans had not only survived but had built complex societies and developed faster-than-light travel independently. "Your planet is impressive," Tyke said, watching jagged mountains pass by outside the vehicle window. These formations would collapse under their own weight on most habitable worlds. General Kim nodded. "Earth has shaped us in many ways, Commander. Our gravity, atmospheric composition, weather patterns, they've all contributed to what humans have become." "And what is that exactly?" asked Tyke. Kim's smile changed slightly. "That's what you're here to observe, isn't it?" The vehicle turned onto a wide road leading to a massive complex of buildings nestled against a mountainside. Flags from different Earth regions flapped in the wind. Hundreds of young humans moved with purpose between buildings, many engaged in physical activities that made Tyke tired just watching. "The International Military Academy," announced Kim, "home to 5,000 cadets from 193 nations." Tyke's translator struggled with the concept of nations, separate human political entities sharing one world. Most species achieved unified planetary government before developing space travel. Humans apparently had not. As they exited the vehicle, a thunderous boom shook the air. Tyke instinctively dropped to a defensive posture, his biology preparing for threat. General Kim placed a steadying hand near Tyke's shoulder. "Just a training exercise, Commander. Artillery practice in the South Range." Tyke slowly straightened, embarrassed by his reaction. "You conduct live-fire exercises at your educational facility?" "Of course," said Kim, as if this were completely normal. How else would cadets learn proper weapons handling? Looking at the humans around him, creatures who could breathe toxic oxygen, withstand bone-crushing gravity, and apparently found explosive training reasonable, Tyke began to understand why the Confederation Council had insisted on this diplomatic mission. These humans weren't just survivors of a death world, they were products of it. And Tyke had 4 more days to learn just how dangerous that made them. The morning began with General Kim leading Tyke to a large open field, where dozens of human cadets gathered in neat rows. They wore simple brown uniforms covered in dirt and sweat. Tyke noticed how none showed signs of discomfort despite the rising heat. "This is our basic combat readiness course," Kim explained. "All first-year cadets complete it daily." A loud horn sounded. The cadets moved into action, rushing toward a complex array of obstacles. Tyke watched as they climbed tall walls using only their upper limbs, swung across muddy water pits on ropes, and crawled under razor wire. "They do this willingly?" Tyke asked, his translator barely keeping up with his shocked tone. "They compete for it," Kim replied. "The fastest squad earned special privileges." Tyke's 4 eyes widened as he noticed flames erupting ahead. A row of metal pipes spewed fire across the path, creating a barrier of intense heat. Without hesitation, the cadets charged through, some with minor burns on their exposed skin. "Stop them," Tyke cried out. "They're being injured." Kim looked confused. "Those are just training flames, low intensity. But their outer covering, their skin, it's burning. Minor surface damage. It heals quickly." Tyke's breathing quickened inside his environmental suit. On his world, any breach of the exoskeleton required immediate medical attention. These humans treated damaged skin as insignificant. They moved to another training area where cadets practiced descending from a tall tower using ropes. Tyke watched their technique with professional interest. Despite Earth's crushing gravity, the humans controlled their descent with just their hands and feet. A sharp crack followed by a scream drew their attention. A female cadet had lost her grip and fallen the last few meters. She lay on the ground, holding her arm at an unnatural angle. "Medical emergency," Tyke called out, his suit automatically sending distress signals. General Kim calmly tapped his communication device. "Medical team to repel Tower 3. 2 humans in white uniforms arrived quickly. They examined the injured cadet who was now sitting up despite her obvious pain. "Clean break of the radius," one medic reported. "No compound fracture." Tyke moved closer. "Will she be transported to a medical facility for reconstruction surgery?" The injured cadet looked up at Tyke with curiosity rather than pain. "It's just a broken arm, sir." The medics applied a hard shell around the broken limb and injected something into the cadet's arm. Within minutes, she was standing, her arm now encased in a white protective cover. "Cadet Moon, report to modified training." After lunch, General Kim instructed. "Yes, sir." The cadet saluted with her good arm and walked away. "She's returning to training? Today?" Tyke couldn't hide his disbelief. Of course. She can't practice rappelling, but she can still run, train with her non-dominant hand, and study tactical simulations. They continued the tour, passing a large pool where cadets practiced swimming in full combat gear. Some appeared to be deliberately sinking to the bottom, remaining underwater for time periods that made Tyke's hearts beat faster. "Are they drowning?" he asked, pointing a trembling limb toward the pool. "Underwater survival training," Kim explained. "Humans can hold their breath for several minutes with proper training." Later, they observed cadets in a simulated urban combat zone. The structures were deliberately set on fire, forcing the trainees to complete their mission objectives while dealing with smoke, heat, and collapsing debris. In real combat situations, environmental hazards often pose greater threats than enemy forces, Kim noted. "Our cadets must learn to function in any condition." By midday, Tyke needed to adjust his exoskeleton's support settings. The constant walking and observing had taxed his system, yet the human cadets showed no signs of fatigue despite their grueling activities. During the meal break, Tyke watched cadets consume their food quickly while discussing the morning's training, with excitement rather than relief or complaint. Some even bore visible injuries, bruises, cuts, minor burns, yet none sought medical attention. "General Kim," Tyke said quietly, "on my world, What I've seen today would qualify as survival training for our most elite special forces. Kim seemed surprised. This is just standard preparation. Basic training. Tyke looked at his host with new understanding. I'm beginning to see why the Confederation classified your species as concerning. Kim smiled. We're just well adapted to our environment, Commander. That's what worries me, Tyke replied. Your environment would kill most sentient beings, yet you call it home. The third day of Commander Tyke's visit began in a large classroom. Unlike the physical training areas, this room seemed normal and safe. Rows of desks faced a central display screen. Cadets sat with small computers taking notes as an older human with gray hair spoke. Today we will study the Battle of Incheon, said the instructor, Professor Han. One of the most significant amphibious landings in human military history. Tyke settled into a specially reinforced chair at the back of the room. General Kim sat beside him, occasionally whispering explanations of human terms the translation software struggled with. The professor activated the main screen, showing maps and old images of human vessels approaching a coastline. The tide variations at Incheon created extreme challenges. Landing at the wrong time meant certain death for our forces. Tyke listened as the cadets began discussing the battle. What shocked him wasn't the content, but their tone. They spoke of thousands of human deaths with the same calm, analytical approach a scientist might use to describe chemical reactions. The casualty rates were acceptable given the strategic objective, said one cadet, a young female named Cadet Bay. By accepting 3,500 coalition casualties, they secured a position that ultimately saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Another cadet disagreed. The naval bombardment was insufficient. With proper artillery preparation, casualties could have been reduced by 40% while maintaining the element of surprise. They debated different approaches, suggesting alternate strategies that might have resulted in fewer or greater numbers of dead humans. No one showed emotional distress when discussing their ancestors' deaths. Don't they feel anything about these losses? Tyke whispered to General Kim. They feel deeply, Kim replied, but effective military leaders must separate emotion from analysis. We study our failures and successes with equal detachment. After the lecture, they visited what humans called the Combat Psychology Laboratory. Tyke expected another classroom. Instead, they entered a facility with multiple simulation chambers. Here we conduct stress inoculation training, explained Dr. Park, the head of the department. Soldiers who experience controlled stress in training perform better under real combat conditions. Tyke watched through observation windows as cadets entered small rooms individually. Inside, they wore devices over their eyes and ears. Their vital signs appeared on monitors outside the room. What are they experiencing? Tyke asked. Simulated combat trauma, Dr. Park said. The system creates scenarios that trigger fear responses. Battlefield injuries, death of squad members, civilian casualties, moral dilemmas under fire. Tyke noticed the cadets' heart rates spiked dramatically. Some showed physical responses, sweating, trembling, rapid breathing. One male cadet's monitor showed stress hormones at levels that would cause heart failure in Tyke's species. This is torture, Tyke said quietly. Dr. Park looked surprised. This is preparation. Better to face these realities here than unprepared in actual combat. After 30 minutes, the simulation ended. The cadets emerged from their chambers, removing their devices. Tyke expected to see traumatized individuals requiring medical attention. Instead, the cadets gathered in a circle, talking animatedly. I got the civilian evacuation scenario, said one. The building collapsed while I was still inside with 3 children. That one's rough, another replied. I had the field amputation today. My hands are still shaking. Most shocking to Tyke, they began laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but genuine shared amusement. Remember when Jun got that scenario last month? He cried so hard his face shield fogged up. The mentioned cadet grinned. At least I didn't. Throw up like Cadet Min. They continued sharing their experiences, comparing reactions, offering advice to each other. What had begun as individual trauma was transforming before Tyke's eyes into collective strength. I don't understand, Tyke said to General Kim. They experienced severe psychological distress, yet now they seem happy. Shared hardship builds stronger bonds than shared pleasure, Kim explained. These cadets will trust each other more completely now. When real danger comes, that trust saves lives. As they left the psychology department, Tyke watched the group of cadets walking together toward their next class. Their casual physical contact, arms around shoulders, playful pushes, showed a level of connection Tyke's species reserved, only for life partners. On my world, Tyke said slowly, we avoid pain at all costs. We would never intentionally experience distress. And that, replied General Kim, is the fundamental difference between species from garden worlds and death worlds. For us, pain has always been inevitable, so we learn to use it instead of fear it. Tyke's translation device couldn't find the right words for what he felt. It wasn't just fear of humans now. It was a deeper understanding that their greatest strength wasn't physical at all. Commander Tyke began his 4th day at the academy feeling uneasy. The previous days had shown him humans were physically resilient and psychologically hardened for warfare. He now understood why the Confederation classified them as a potential threat. General Kim met him outside his quarters. Today's schedule is different, she announced. We're observing humanitarian response training. Tyke tilted his head in confusion. Humanitarian? I thought this was a military academy. Military service involves more than combat, Kim explained, as they walked toward a new section of the campus. Many of our deployments involve disaster response, civilian protection, and medical assistance. They entered a large building labeled Crisis Response Center. Inside, dozens of cadets wore white and red uniforms instead of their combat gear. They moved between different training stations where instructors demonstrated medical techniques. These cadets are learning emergency trauma care, explained Dr. Song, who greeted them at the entrance. Every soldier receives basic medical training, regardless of their specialty. Tyke watched as cadets practiced on realistic human models. They applied pressure to bleeding wounds, inserted breathing tubes, and stabilized broken limbs. Their faces showed the same intense focus he had seen during combat exercises. The techniques are similar to battlefield medicine, Dr. Song continued, but adapted for civilian casualties who lack military training and physical conditioning. They moved to another area where cadets studied maps and coordinated through communication devices. Projected on screens were simulated natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, fires. Disaster response requires precise coordination, General Kim explained. A mistake in deployment can cost civilian lives. Tyke observed cadets arguing passionately about resource allocation, where to send water purification equipment versus medical teams. The same analytical minds that had coldly calculated battle casualties now debated how to save the maximum number of lives. I don't understand, Tyke admitted. Why train warriors to heal? These seem like opposite skills. Not to humans, Kim replied. Protection takes many forms. After lunch, they traveled to a training ground several kilometers from the main campus. A simulated village had been constructed, then partially destroyed. Buildings leaned at dangerous angles. Debris littered the streets. Smoke machines created low visibility conditions. This exercise simulates a magnitude 8.7 earthquake, explained Captain Kang, the exercise coordinator. Cadets must locate and extract civilians while managing aftershocks and structural collapse. Sirens blared, signaling the start of the exercise. Teams of cadets rushed into the mock disaster zone carrying medical kits and rescue equipment. They moved with the same precision Tyke had seen in combat drills. Hidden throughout the site were human-shaped dummies representing trapped civilians. Some were placed in particularly dangerous locations, under unstable rubble or in smoke-filled buildings. One structure near Tyke suddenly shifted with a loud crack. The exercise controllers had triggered a simulated aftershock. A section of wall collapsed, blocking an entrance where a team of cadets had just entered. Those cadets are trapped, Tyke said with alarm. Part of the exercise, Captain Kang assured him. They must find alternative exits while continuing their mission. A cadet emerged from the building's side window, carrying a small dummy representing a child. As she navigated across a narrow ledge, Loose debris fell around her. Real danger. Tyke realized, not simulation. The cadet lost her footing on the unstable surface. She turned her body to protect the dummy, taking the impact on her back as she fell nearly 3 meters to the ground. Despite obvious pain, she immediately checked the child for injuries before signaling for medical assistance for herself. Later, when Tyke visited the medical center, he found the injured cadet, Cadet Yoon, receiving treatment for a sprained ankle and bruised ribs. "Why did you protect the dummy?" Tyke asked her. "It's not real." Cadet Yoon looked confused by the question. "Training as we fight, sir. In a real situation, the child's survival would be the priority." "Even at risk to yourself?" "Of course," she replied simply. "That's our job." As they left the medical center, Tyke turned to General Kim. "I've observed your cadets train for killing and for saving with equal dedication. These seem contradictory." Kim considered this. Humans evolved as both predators and protectors. Our capacity for violence developed alongside our capacity for self-sacrifice. On a death world like Earth, both were necessary for survival. "In my culture," Tyke said, "we separate these functions. Some protect, others fight." "Perhaps that works on gentler worlds," Kim replied. "But Earth taught us that those who can cause the most harm must also know how to heal. Power requires responsibility." Tyke watched cadets continuing the rescue. Exercise as night fell, working by floodlights. "I came expecting to find warriors," he said quietly. "I didn't expect to find guardians." The morning of Tyke's final day brought clear skies and cool mountain air. The Academy's main parade ground had been transformed overnight. Rows of chairs faced a raised platform decorated with flags from around the world. Family members of graduating cadets filled the seats, their colorful civilian clothes a stark contrast to the neat military uniforms Tyke had grown accustomed to seeing. "Today we celebrate our graduating class," General Kim explained as they took seats in a special section for honored guests. 300 cadets completing their training. The ceremony began with music, rhythmic sounds produced by humans blowing into metal tubes and striking stretched membranes. Tyke found it strangely stirring, despite its alien nature. Then came the cadets marching in perfect formation. Their uniforms gleamed in the sunlight, medals and insignia catching the light. Tyke noticed something he hadn't fully appreciated before: the physical diversity of humans. Their skin ranged from pale pink to deep brown. Their heights and builds varied widely. Their facial features showed clear genetic diversity. "Your species has remarkable variation," Tyke observed. "We evolved on different continents with different environmental pressures," Kim explained. "Those differences once divided us. Now they strengthen us." The Academy's senior officials delivered speeches about duty, honor, and service. Tyke listened carefully as translators converted the words to his language. Despite cultural differences, he recognized universal concepts of sacrifice and commitment. When the cadets received their commissions, they swore an oath. Tyke's translator struggled with the nuances, but he understood the core meaning. These warriors pledged to defend their people, obey civilian leadership, and uphold ethical principles even in conflict. After the ceremony, General Kim led Tyke to a secure room deep within the Academy's administration building. The walls were made of thick material that blocked electronic signals. "What I'm about to show you isn't shared with outsiders," Kim said, activating a display screen. "But the Confederation should understand what humanity has overcome." The screen filled with images that made Tyke's 4 eyes widen. Humans fighting. Humans on a scale he couldn't comprehend. Entire cities destroyed. Weapons of terrifying power. Millions dead. "This was our last global conflict," Kim explained. "Before we achieved unity." "You did this to your own kind?" Tyke asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes, our capacity for violence nearly destroyed us." Kim changed the display to show more recent images. Humans from different regions working together, rebuilding destroyed areas, creating new institutions. "How did you stop?" Tyke asked. "We recognized what we were," Kim said simply. Predators, with the power to destroy ourselves. So we chose a different path. Kim showed more historical footage, humans gradually dismantling weapon systems, establishing global cooperation frameworks, creating the unified training system that produced the Academy. We still maintain defensive capabilities, Kim explained. Our world remains dangerous and the galaxy holds unknown threats. But we channel our predatory instincts into protection rather than conquest. Later, as Tyke prepared to board his shuttle, General Kim presented him with a small metal object, an Academy insignia. A reminder of your time with us, she said. Tyke held the symbol carefully. I arrived thinking I understood humans, he admitted. I was wrong. Many species make that mistake, Kim smiled. They see our physical adaptations to Earth and assume we're simply strong or resilient. They miss what truly defines us. Which is? Tyke asked. Duality, Kim replied. We contain extreme capacity for both destruction and creation, violence and compassion. Our history is learning to balance these opposing forces. As his shuttle lifted off, Tyke began composing his report to the Confederation Council. He would need to choose his words carefully. How could he explain that humans weren't dangerous because they were aggressive, but because they had mastered their aggression while maintaining its power? The standard assessment would recommend isolation or containment of such a volatile species. But Tyke now understood this would be a mistake. Humanity had done what few species in the galaxy had managed. They had faced their own violent nature and chosen a different path without surrendering their strength. His report would recommend caution, yes, but also engagement. These humans, these Deathworld survivors, would be valuable allies precisely because they understood darkness so intimately. As Earth receded behind him, a small blue sphere against the vastness of space, Tyke felt changed. He had expected to study primitive warriors, but instead found philosopher guardians, predators who chose peace not from weakness but from wisdom, and that, he now understood, made them the most formidable species in the galaxy. The end.